I do not like macOS. Or at least I think I don't. But the last time I made a genuine attempt to switch was 10 years ago. So even if Microsoft hadn't spent the last decade speedrunning the destruction of Windows, I would be way overdue for a bite out of Tim's apple. So I'm doing it. After switching to the iPhone and honestly not really liking it, I'm doubling down. I am embracing Apple's philosophy, which is that if I'm not enjoying their product, it's probably because I haven't bought enough of their other products yet. So I need a MacBook for my commuter backpack and a Mac for my desk. And I will either discover why the heck people love these things so much, or I'll discover why they still only have 15% market share. But before I can do either of those things, which ones do I choose?
That is where I come in. I have assembled a trove of apples behind us, and I've recruited a couple of Mac advisors to help him make the right decision.
And there's stakes? Stakes, what stakes?
Oh yes, the stakes. At the end of this video, you don't get to just take something off of the table. You have to pull out your credit card and buy the exact spec of what we decide is going to be best for you. Then you get to exclusively use your Macs for a month and see how it goes.
Oh, so no pressure then. Well, fine, but if I have to waste money on a Mac, then they have to waste time hearing this message from our sponsor, Hetzner. They're expanding their offerings with object storage, high-performance, scalable S3 compatible solutions that can keep your unstructured data secure. Get access to their cloud servers using our link and enter code LTT25 to save $20 today.
Let's start things off with the dark horse option, the iPad Pro.
In fairness to him, the performance really is very close to a MacBook. It even uses the same 10-core M4 processor, which is kind of incredible when you look at this thing. But the processing isn't even the real reason you'd want one. The real reason is the display.
This is a 13-inch tandem OLED panel that goes up to 1600 nits, and it's one of the best displays we have ever seen, just period. The brightness combined with those perfect blacks of the OLED makes visuals pop in a way that pretty much nothing else can.
Except for one small problem. I'd be stuck with iPad OS, not to mention the stupid ergonomics. So, tell you what, you can take one of these, but
No.
I'm more interested in a real laptop. You know, the kind that fits on a lap.
Yeah. So wait, am I switching too?
I don't see why you should make me switch and you shouldn't have to.
Because originally, I was okay with that, but now we're in February and the cool laptops are coming out.
Should have thought of that before you pushed this video. Looking at Apple's Air and Pro MacBooks then, there are a few key things to consider, with one being performance. Apple's lineup is a cluster right now, so depending on which shell you prefer, your processor choices might be limited not to the latest CPUs, but rather to a generation or even 2 generations ago. For my use case though, which is mostly word processing in Google Docs, performance is not a major consideration, and there weren't any major efficiency gains in terms of battery life going from the M3 to the M4. Not to mention that the weight and thinness of a MacBook Air is also very appealing. But there are some areas where the Pro clearly pulls ahead.
For me, the Pro models could make more sense. Even configured with the same CPU, they have better cooling, enabling them to turbo for much longer.
For all the SolidWorks you'll be doing?
Apparently it works great now.
What? Really?
Yeah, in parallels. You just have to spend $100 on getting that.
That's the Mac way. You can do anything you want, just gotta spend. Regardless of what kind of work we're doing, we'll be doing it on a liquid retina display. But it's worth noting that that marketing term doesn't actually tell us that much about the performance. On the Air, it only goes to 500 nits peak brightness, 60 Hertz, while on the Pro, it'll do up to 120 Hertz and up to 1600 nits for incredible visuals. That is, everywhere other than the camera notch.
Another problem for the Air are the ports. You get 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports, MagSafe, and a headphone jack. That is it. On the Pro, there isn't a whole lot more, but the additional Thunderbolt port, SD card reader, and in particular the HDMI 2.1 port are very, very welcome.
On the topic of HDMI output, I rarely plug more than one external display into my laptop, but if you need more, your mileage may vary depending on the CPU you use. You realize you're gonna have to put this down at some point and pick one, right?
I know, but it's just like Surface Laptop Bad Edition here.
I don't think there's any option other than the Air for me.
I kind of want the Air. I'm just really concerned about the cooling because I'm guessing SolidWorks probably runs inefficiently.
Yeah.
And I think after like 5 to 10 minutes, this thing will just be hitting thermal limits and not able to do it.
Well, not only that, but the skin temperature is probably not going to be dangerous because Apple makes sure that it isn't. But what it won't be is great.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I want the bigger one.
I don't know. The 15's pretty nice.
Oh no. How much more is it though? I don't want to spend any more on this than I have to, Alex.
Fair enough.
Yeah, this seems fine. 16 gigs unified memory, 256 gigs SSD.
Sure.
Yeah, how much faster is an M3? Because everything I've heard, people are just pretty happy with their M series silicon, regardless of what generation it is these days.
Yeah, not much.
I'm just gonna get the M2. $1,000 is enough to spend on a machine that I don't even want. How about you? Are you gonna consider pricing at all? Or because we're not buying you one, are you just gonna grab whatever you want off the table?
Yeah, I think it's just gonna be this one.
Is this an M2 or an M3?
I think it's an M2.
Oh, okay, so conveniently, this is basically what I'm getting.
Yeah.
Of course, we're not done. I'm also gonna need a desktop or two. So let's kick things off with a classic, the iMac, which, man, Alex, I know you wrote up a whole bit about this thing, but let's be realistic. These small screen, limited I/O, non-upgradable e-waste machines are aimed at the kinds of folks who desire beauty over functionality, which, let's face it, I am not. So why don't we move on to something a little more practical. The new Mac Mini. I am a huge fan of this little beast, and it was actually the inspiration for us bringing back this series. Our unit here has an M4 chip with a 10-core CPU, a 10-core GPU, and 16 gigs of unified memory. And I don't know what impresses me more about it, the performance, the size, or the cost. For just $600, this petite pomme offers a shocking value proposition. It takes up virtually no space, and it is darn near silent doing it. However, that value proposition drops off sharply as soon as you need more storage or memory. Here we are. I don't think I need the M4 Pro, so these are my base options, but I also don't want to pay extra for storage. I'm going to be using 10 gig networking for all of my storage because this is going to be a work machine. So what I actually want is, oh my God, you don't even get double the RAM for $200? You get 8 gigs of RAM for $200? It's like Apple took that observation that we made, that their memory and storage upgrades cost more per weight than literal gold, and they were like, we can do better. Ugh. $100 for 10 gig, I don't even mind, but I don't want to pay $200 for 8 gigs of RAM. 16 enough? I was using 15 gigs in Chrome tabs yesterday. I'm gonna get 24 gigs. $900. No, I'm not doing it. I'm over it, $700. There is good news though. You don't actually have to pay the exorbitant Apple tax for storage and memory if you know the right people. So get subscribed because we plan on exploring upgrade abilities that some might consider to be unnatural, which could be particularly valuable for purebred tab hounds or, more realistically, AI developers who could easily blast through the Mac Mini's maximum 64 gigs of RAM, which brings us to the big boy, the Mac Pro. With 64 gigs of RAM as the starting configuration and a $7,000 starting price, the Mac Pro strikes fear into any workload and into the wallet of any YouTuber cringy enough to buy one as a flex. This particular specimen contains a comical 192 gigabytes of unified memory, a 24-core CPU, 76 GPU cores, and a 32-core neural engine, bringing the price to an eye-watering $9,600. I do have a question though. Given that this monster is still limited to M2 series chips, and our little tiny Mac Mini over here has an M4, how close are these in performance? Should we drag race them?
Yeah.
I'm Team Mac Mini, let's go. 3, 2, 1.
There's no way.
Realistically, I know the answer, but whatever. Performance per volume?
Very high.
And Yeah, okay, 24 cores still beats 10 cores, regardless of how much better those cores are.
Absolute shocker. Do you know what else is shocking? It is Alex Week. We have 3 exclusives on Floatplane centered around me to, well, celebrate myself. So check it out at lmg.gg/alex25.
Now, there is one notable Mac missing from our lineup here, the Mac Studio. Splitting the difference between the Mini and the not so Mini, you can option the Studio with the wild core counts and RAM capacities of the Pro, but just without the PCIe expansion slots. We do have a Mac Studio in the house, but we weren't able to steal it because Labs is using it for AI stuff, which makes sense. That is the powerful Mac desktop that makes any sense. Oh, now I pick one? This one.
Easy.
I didn't even need to look at that one. Oh, but because we didn't choose the iMac, I'm going to need a display as well. Wait, what? I have to choose an Apple display? This is as low as the height adjust goes, and this one doesn't have any at all.
Okay, well, you have to look at them at least.
Oh. All right, well, first up is the non-display display, the Apple Vision Pro, which I could connect to my laptop or my desktop and then project a screen, or screens, now that it's been updated, anywhere around my office, which sounds pretty great, except that I typically need to work longer than 1 hour at a time, and if I spend longer than that in the Vision Pro, it gives me a splitting headache. I also can't be arriving on set with goggle marks all over my face, so I think we'll have to move on. To the Studio display. At 27 inches with 5K resolution and 600 nit peak brightness, this is a pretty darn nice monitor, or at least it was. In 2025 though, it's pretty difficult to stomach the $1,600 asking price for specs like that, especially when a height adjustable stand brings the price up to $2,000. But hey, why try to stomach $2,000 for this when you can projectile vomit $5,000 at Apple for the Pro Display XDR? Okay, maybe I'm getting a bit hung up on the price here, but come on, I'm still not over the fact that the stand for this monitor alone costs $1,000. With that said, there is a lot to like here. Its 1600 nits peak brightness is enough for not just an impactful HDR experience, but conceivably enough to master HDR content on it, and its 6K resolution allows you to have a full resolution 4K video with plenty of pixels left over for your timeline and your media bin. Of course, I'm not a professional video editor, just a professional video reviewer, so what about, oh goodness, a third option? The display that I already use on my desk at work, the Asus PG42U. Although the resolution is just 4K, and the peak brightness tops out at just 1000 nits, not to mention that it has its own issues with respect to height adjust and stand maneuverability, in every other conceivable way, it wins over Apple's offerings. It's OLED for perfect blacks, it has 138 Hz refresh rate for snappy navigation, it is way bigger to help with multitasking, oh, and it costs barely more than the f***ing stand for the Pro Display XDR. Like, I know this isn't an Apple product, but I'm guessing that the vast majority of Mac Mini buyers are not gonna be eviscerating their wallets for a display.
It's just so hilarious. If you want excellent display from Apple at a fair price, they're very happy to sell it to you. You just have to be okay with having a laptop attached to it.
On that note, I guess it's time to head to apple.com and order the laptop I'll be loading into my commuter backpack, lttstore.com. All right, let's get on with this. $2,500. Do you know how much of a single GPU that could buy for me?
Most of it.
Actually makes it sound like a deal. I'm getting 2 whole computers for less than a 5090. Place your order.
I do a lot less gaming though. Actually, realistically, I'll just be playing Balatro, so like whatever.
There it is. Great. Hey, look, my Apple Watch says they're processing my order. It's gonna be interesting to see his perspective since he doesn't have an iPhone and doesn't have a watch. He's not ecosystemed at all.
No. Not stoked.
Sharge. While iPhones are known for their battery efficiency, it helps to have some backup power on the go, especially if you're the YouTube or Netflix binging type. With Sharge's ICEMAG 2, you get Qi 2 certified 15-watt charging, a multi-angle foldable kickstand for your viewing pleasure, a 10,000 milliamp hour battery, and, most importantly of course, that sweet, sweet RGB. You also don't have to worry about the battery bank getting too hot. It lives up to its name thanks to an active cooling fan and full aluminum alloy backplate. And for those situations where you need a quick top-up, you can break out a trusty USB-C cable for 30 watts of wired charging power. You never know when you might need some extra juice, so use our link today and grab a Sharge ICEMAG 2. Better safe than sorry. If you guys enjoyed this video, maybe check out the one where Alex and I switched to Snapdragon laptops for a month. Or, in my case, much longer than a month.
Yeah, neither of us switched back. We'll see what happens with these apples.